Asia CEO is really a sought-after brand and recognition among the private sector.
I work abroad as an OFW, and I've seen the experience of how Filipino were treated that time. So I always thought of creating an event someday to really recognize Filipinos and also market Philippines.
Let's present Philippines in a positive light. And the goal is expand your business, start your business, move your business to Philippines, hire Filipinos. They're good people to work with, and you'll do well. That's the goal.
Way back when we were the poorer or sick country of Asia, and now if you take a look at, for example, the BPO industry, we're #1 in the world. There's a lot of potential for the country, and if we are really going to see fruition that we are going to be one of the top economies by 2050, I think it is very important for us to really pool our resources together.
And we always believed from the beginning that this association was the right medium, the right structure, and the right outfit to really put the Philippine business community on top of the agenda for the Filipino people and also for the international community.
Well, it gives me a fantastic insight in terms of how broad the industries are and how many different types of successes that are contributing to the growth and inclusive growth of this nation.
We have to create a future where our next generation of talent and leaders is prepared for all of the new opportunities that will present themselves.
Asia CEO Forum is very unique because it is more than any other forum emphasizing that this is about nation building.
Economic growth is a very wide subject, and Asia CEO Forum always finds the right angle with the right topic at the right time to talk about, and that's why there is such attraction to these events.
They connect people, but they also create a platform for transfer of best practices, best knowledge.
I believe in the vision of Richard and Rebecca. I think they have this vision to help make the Philippines a first world country in 2030.
And with our partnership together, I know that we're achieving a lot of things.
Thank you for what you're doing. We applaud your efforts. We're proud and happy to be your partners.
We encourage other companies to join in and be a sponsor, and I'm very, very sure that they'll find it worthwhile.
They say what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But what makes one unbreakable? That courage to move forward. That desire for self-discovery, to surpass new limits. That grit to evolve and emerge anew. Now, brave the new world and discover this new chapter. Defy the odds. Live outside your limits. Break the wheel of what's expected. After all, it's not the destination that matters. It's the journey. You are unbreakable.
Let's bow down our heads and place ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this event in which we come to share with one another. Glorious and blessed God, we place our work and ourselves into your hands. Anoint our creativity, our ideas, our energy, so that even the smallest tasks may bring you honor. God, when we are challenged, guide us. When we are weary, energize us. May the work that we do and the way that we do it bring home life, hope, and courage to each and every one of us. Bless our speakers with wisdom and discernment. Rooted in your love, may your love and guidance be with us. All these we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Welcome everyone to the Ultimate FinTech Forum 2021. And this year, it really is a breakthrough year for financial technologies and financial inclusion. Too many Filipinos are unbanked and outside of the banking industry, and this is the opportunity of the nation's life, really to bring all Filipinos into financial inclusion, and let's see this nation really move ahead. So we have some just fantastic speakers. I'm not exaggerating, we really do. We didn't expect, but there's just so much interest in this field, and it's such an exciting time. It really is the tipping point for this technology and the inclusion that it brings. So hang on to your chair, strap yourself in for this year's The Ultimate FinTech Forum 2021, and glad to have you with us. To open the event, we have a special speaker. His name is Billy Valtos. He is one of the region's most prominent venture capitalists. For many years, he's been doing this, very heavily focused in the FinTech area. This is one of the big areas and the big opportunities for the Philippines in particular, but certainly across the Asia-Pacific region. So with our opening message, please welcome Billy Valtos. Welcome, Billy.
Thank you, Richard. This is a very interesting topic and timely. I think from an investing point of view, there's a lot of activity in FinTech. There has been a boom actually prior to COVID, and actually the 2018 and 2019 numbers showed over $100 billion of investment in FinTech companies. For the prior 10 years, it was $100 billion. The numbers are not really clear yet for 2020, given the timing and such. But as if I recall, first and second quarter each recorded roughly 8 or 10 billion. So So maybe in terms of venture investing in fintech, it was probably a bit quieter, but I think by the second half of 2020, you'll see the numbers pop back up. This is a topic which, and an area which has touched everyone's lives all around the world, whether they were first movers a decade ago or just taking it, looking at the situations and the market inefficiencies and needs because of the global pandemic. It's a very exciting topic. In the Philippines, you have really largely driven by the financial institutions, perhaps Union Bank, East West Bank, ING. These are groups that are moving into digital banking, and their management teams can talk deeper about it than I can. But there's some exciting movement, like for example, the 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓿𝓮𝓻 group, 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓻 Development Corporation, which is a diversified conglomerate. Last year was the first first Philippine banking group to have a fully digital banking license, meaning not just an app off your traditional bricks and mortar business to transact, to make deposits, to transfer monies, to possibly even borrow, but they have a fully digital unit called 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀, K-O-M-O, which on your phone, you don't interact with a branch. Everything, you fill out your forms, you transact, and because of the lower costs involved in having a fully digital bank, they're also allowed and have the benefit of offering higher interest rates on deposits. I think approximately 3%, when the market is offering less than 1% on deposits. So the cost savings of going fully digital inures straight to the customer. Exciting times. I think innovation will continue. I think if I looked at fintech investment over, let's say, the last 10 years or so, there have been basically three main areas that I think investors are more comfortable with. Number one, fintech is highly regulated, and there are new areas now which the various regulatory authorities, not just in the Philippines but globally, are looking at how to regulate and protect the consumer as well as the financial institutions. They want to protect against fraud, maybe digital money theft, data privacy, and the like. But with this higher regulatory environment, investors are getting more comfortable because the rules, they can see what the rules are, they can navigate around that, and they can see what the emerging rules will be as well. Also, I think maybe versus 10 years ago, the fintech entrepreneurs or businesses were trying to fight the incumbents, like the banks, trying to compete with them. And now I believe there's just a lot more collaboration, a lot more ecosystem building, where they realize to make this ubiquitous and make it valuable to a larger set of customers, you need to interconnect. You need to work with the different banks, the different intermediaries, payment gateways, and collaborate. And I think it goes along the lines of, rising tide raises all ships. I mean, it's at the end of the day the right thing to do, and it's good for the consumer. I think this is exciting times from a VC investor's point of view. I think generally, VCs have their investment strategy. Some are very broad-based and will invest in a number of different sectors or industries, and there's others that specialize. And the ones I would say specialize in fintech could be, for example, Citibank Ventures out of New York, or Bain Capital, or Anderson Horowitz, who've done a number of Silicon fintech investments. So they're seeing a variety of emerging technologies. There were some big IPOs planned for this year, 2021, such as Stripe, and very large valuations. Even Robinhood, the brokerage platform, kind of involved in this GameStop and short squeeze rally in the U.S. market. So the investors there should do very well, and many of them are actually prior to going public raised large rounds at very large valuations, largely based, I believe, on metrics that are driven by, are they a tech company or are they a finance company? And those that are more tech oriented, again, where let's say that their software focuses or can generate recurring revenue, becomes more valuable. I think that companies that are ready to go public now and had their venture financing actually not only grew very fast and generated a lot of revenue, some more profitable than others, but ultimately I think what made them very successful is they developed a very unique relationship with their customer, of comfort, of confidence, and of ease of use. And that relationship now more than ever, because everything is moving in a digital transformative way. If you can lock that relationship with the customer and derive some long-term value, as well as being tech enabled, it should bode very well for the investors in these companies. So I think in the Philippines versus say Silicon Valley versus the UK, Singapore, there are a number of opportunities. I think the opportunities are probably emerging faster than they have in the every year. We're seeing more and more deal flow around fintech. Some are migration of businesses from other countries that were very successful and moving in. For example, Invest3, as I understand it, when they applied for the license here in the Philippines, they already proven very large success in Indonesia, and they're in Thailand now. And this is a Singapore-based company, again with a joint venture with the Philinvest Group. So it's okay to migrate successful models to other geographies that are highly underserved. So exciting times, and I think your speakers will have some very good use cases of their business models and how they took advantage of market opportunities. And I think all your speakers, their businesses were founded pre-COVID, and I believe all their businesses are thriving much better because of some of the constraints that global forces created, and is forcing consumers and institutions to move into a more digital, innovative way to solve their problems. So with that, I just wanted to share some views, and I think in the Philippine context there'll be more fintech opportunities to invest in. The issue then is going to be, are these going to be narrow, meaning helping one or two financial institutions, or will it be ubiquitous and service a number of customers and really grow and scale by the likes of GCash or PayMaya and the like. So thank you for having me. This has been very enjoyable, and I look forward to the Q&A later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Billy Valtos. And a friend of his is our next speaker. 𝐀𝐒 Lim is based in Singapore and runs a very successful operation focused on lending to MSMEs throughout the region. And Philippines is a market that he's very excited about and doing a lot of work in, and a very fast growing operation he has here. So really pleased to have him, certainly making a big mark in the region in the fintech area, and in particular, very exciting, but the underserved MSME sector. So please welcome 𝐀𝐒 Lim. Very glad to have you, 𝐀𝐒. Welcome to the event.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to sharing with you. Thanks for the introduction. Allow me to talk a little bit about Invest3, as well as our plans to address one of the pressing issues the country faces, which is that of the MSME credit gap. So Investry, a quick introduction about ourselves, is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that is domiciled out from Indonesia. We have operations in Jakarta. We have also started 2 years ago in Thailand. And as you correctly mentioned, Richard, we're hoping to start in the Philippines. As of end of December 2020, we were the first licensed crowdfunding platform by the SEC of the Philippines. We've partnered with the Philinvest Group via FDEV to start our operations in the Philippines. So over the course of the next couple of minutes, allow me to talk a little bit about the credit gap in the Philippines, as well as our business model to try to address some of these issues that we face in the Philippines. So Philippines is ranked 142nd globally by the World Bank for the ease of getting credit. Now, why is this so? We believe that this phenomenon is very similar to that of what other SMEs face in the region. That is, most SMEs don't keep good records. A big bulk of them don't have the basic financial knowledge to open a bank account, what more to get a financing loan from banks. So we believe in the Philippines, there's close to 1 million SMEs, as you can see in the slide, that are considered unbankable. The banks themselves try to address this credit gap, but the banks face constraints. Like, for example, if you were to lend to an SME, or not, furthermore, a micro SME, you will have to provide a bigger credit capital gap, or as required by Basel, the Bank of International Settlements. So because of this, banks find it very costly to lend to SMEs. They know they need to have basic infrastructures like opening a branch, hiring credit people. It's very costly to lend to these small companies when you can already lend much larger sums to much more established, bigger company. As such, banks tend to stay away from this lending group because it's costly. Okay, so as a result, what banks do to try to meet this credit gap is to simply ask for collateral. And as we all know, most MSMEs lack collateral, right? This slide talks about the market space that industry is trying to address, what we call the missing middle in the Philippines. If you looked at this pyramid chart, on the left-hand side, the blue column, the bank's top-tier clients are usually corporates that have revenues in excess of $2 million sales per annum. Now, we also have micro-financial institutions that service the micro SMEs. These tend to be the sari-sari stores that bring in revenues less than $60,000 per annum. So we're talking about sales of $5,000 equivalent a month. Investry is trying to make a dent in the medium and small company space. We believe this is the correct segment to target because we think there's close to maybe about 100,000 of such SMEs operating out from the Philippines. This space contributes about 30% of the country's GDP, as well as employing 64% of the country's workforce. They also contribute nearly a quarter of the country's exports. So by targeting this space, Investry and as well as some of the other companies operating in this space will hope to make the biggest impact to the country in terms of employment, in terms of exports, and hopefully to the country's GDP. The Bank Central Philippines, BSP for short, did a recent report called The Future of Banking, where they interviewed multiple SMEs and some of the issues that they face in the course of their business. Now, if we looked at the main obstacles that they face, besides competition, is that of access to capital, right? If you looked at the bottom part of the chart, we see this table below, you see in the banking system in the Philippines, right, as a percentage of loans, since 2018, 2019, when this survey was done, right, SMEs loans contributing to less than 10% of the overall loan portfolio, right? And we actually seen a negative trend by a margin of maybe less than 0.4%. right? And less than 21% of enterprises in the small and medium space actually get access to bank loans. Now, the top 3 concerns faced by SMEs include lack of working capital. This was cited at 64% of all the respondents. Okay, so it is a big issue for SMEs in Philippines, and we're hoping to make a dent on that. So what exactly does Investri do? This is our business model. Investri performs the role of a lending platform where we will match-make borrowers and lenders, right? I use the word borrowers loosely. In the Philippines, the SEC requires us to use notes as opposed to loans, right? So for the purposes of our discussion here, the borrowers will be actually the issuers of notes. Investri will do the due diligence on the underlying issuers/borrowers. We will administer the note issuance process, and in certain circumstances, we'll arrange for credit mitigation facilities, such as escrow facilities, such as credit insurance, to protect the lenders/investors of these notes, right? So that everyone's interests are protected. So for that, we will actually charge a marketplace fee to both users of our platform. It's worthwhile noting that Investri is not constrained like banks. We are a pure marketplace. We do not fund the loans ourselves. We are only a facilitator for these note issuers. Lastly, we also generate our risk scoring model using traditional and non-traditional data. So when I mean traditional data, this is what banks and financial institutions typically gather data from. They include financial statements from the borrowers, access to the credit bureau reports, and in certain circumstances, anti-money laundering services, KYC, PEP checks with data providers like Thomson Reuters. What we do with our partners in Philinvest is we overlay non-traditional data on top of this. For example, if you are a supplier to the Philinvest group ecosystem, perhaps you sell cement to the group. What we do is we can verify with the supply chain management team, which provides us historical data of how this cement supplier has performed in the past. And based on this data, we're able to make an accurate assessment of how well this supplier has performed in the past. Has he been on time? Has he delivered on time? How much has his sales grown over the course of the last few years he's been supplying cement? And based on this, we're able to give them a certain percentage of his sales based on the purchase orders he's been awarded, based on the invoices he's been awarded. So based on this, we are able to make a financing offer to the supplier. That's how we're able to replicate or transfer the credit risk of a small company, a small vendor, to that of a larger group like the Philinvest. All right, so that is in essence our business model. So Richard, back to you. I think that's all I have to say about the credit gap as well as our business model.
Thank you, Casey Lim. We wish you the best with Investri in Philippines. And yeah, we'll be watching how it goes. But given your success in other locations, I'm sure you'll do well. Our next speaker is Paulo Azola, the Managing Director of 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀. This is the FinTech division of the PLDT group, certainly one of the largest, if not the largest, business groups in the nation. And Paulo has a strong background, certainly within the region. He comes originally from Italy, but he worked in the United States and London, and now has really focused on Philippines and growing the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 organization. He is an interesting fellow and will have an interesting story. Please welcome Paulo Azola. Welcome, Paulo.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks a lot for that introduction. I'll share with you a presentation that I've made, and really the objective is to show how 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 is helping to build an end-to-end digital economy in the Philippines, and specifically how we've done so during COVID-19. My name is Paulo Azola. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director of 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀. Now, first of all, who are we and what do we do? We are the largest fintech company in the Philippines when it comes to amount of capital raised. Our shareholders include PLDT, of course, one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines, 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀, the US private equity fund, Tencent, which is of course, the tech company out of China, and then IFC, the investment arm of the World Bank. And we love to call ourselves the only end-to-end financial ecosystem in the Philippines, and there's a good reason for that. Now, we cover every segment that is within the financial system or ecosystem in the Philippines, including the enterprise segment, the consumer segment, and the agent segment. I'll go through each of these and give you a little bit of a flavor of what kind of an ecosystem we've tried to build in the Philippines over the last 5 or 6 years. Now, as you can see, we're very much focused not just on the consumer side of the equation, but also on the enterprise side of the equation. So for us, enterprises of all sizes are our customers. And that is, of course, large enterprises, MSMEs, but also government. We help governments, for example, with the acceptance of payments, as well as with the disbursement of payments. On the consumer side, all three segments or sub-segments of the consumer financial services landscape in the Philippines are our target market. So 109 million Filipinos are our potential customers, from the banked customer base to the underbanked customer base to the fully unbanked base. When it comes to numbers, the enterprise segment in the Philippines is around 1.2 million enterprises of all sizes, and consumers, again, are 109 million. The banked base is actually very small, at probably lower than 5%. The underbanked, those who have a bank account, but obviously less banked than the fully banked segment, are around 20 to 25% of the population. And the remaining 70+% of the population is fully unbanked in the Philippines. 29 million plus customers are registered customers of PayMaya in the Philippines, and that's about a quarter of the population of the country. And when it comes to enterprises, we are the #1 processor for online payments in the Philippines by a very large margin. We have, on the wallet side, the largest network of digital payments touchpoints with 200,000 across the country. And we are the widest available network of remittance agents at 38,000 across the entire nation. Now, for us, what's important is our mission. What are we trying to achieve in the Philippines? Well, we're trying to drive cashless adoption or accelerate cashless adoption, but making sure that no one is left behind. And that's why we focus very much not just on the banked and underbanked segment, but also very much on the unbanked segment. Now, on the consumer side, the objective really is to provide every Filipino with a financial account. And this is something that in a lot of developed markets isn't really an issue. A lot of people have bank accounts, and even in some of the largest emerging markets in the world, like India, for example, the vast majority of people are fully banked or have a bank account in any case. In the Philippines, that's not actually true. And therefore, our objective is to put a financial account in the hands of every Filipino. Now, what kind of use cases or what are they getting out of our financial account? They're getting, first of all, the ability to send money across the country, the ability to purchase something online or face-to-face, and of course, the ability to pay bills and get other forms of financial services like loans and insurance. Now, Filipinos tend to really like apps like ours or platforms like ours, and that's because, of course, obviously our ratings on Google Play Store and iOS Store really validate that. We have some of the highest ratings, not just in the local market, but also globally. On the enterprise side, we, as I mentioned earlier, cater for enterprises of all sizes, and of course, both online as well as face-to-face or offline. Now, in the online large enterprise segment, the kind of product that we brought to the market is something that was very unavailable before we came to market about 5 years ago. So it's not just providing a payment gateway, it's also providing the entire stack of payment processing services and acquiring services, as they're called, similar to what a Stripe does in the United States or an Adyen does in Europe. And we do that for not just our own wallet, which our consumers use, but also across all payment methods, from a Visa, MasterCard, which we are a licensed direct acquirer of, to American Express, of course, JCB, the Chinese wallets of Alipay and WeChat Pay, as well as alternative payment methods that are very, very prominent locally, like PayMaya and the other wallets. Now, in the offline segment, in the large offline segment, we brought the first Android terminal device to the market in the Philippines, and we did so in about 2 or 3 years ago. And that really allowed merchants that were previously not accepting non-cash transactions, or were only accepting cash, to really dive into card and QR payments in a way that they weren't doing before. And that's true of very large merchants like McDonald's and like several other very large merchants. But we also managed to bring a better experience and a much faster experience to merchants who were already previously acquired. Now, during the pandemic, of course, these kind of services, like our payment gateway, like our PayMaya One devices, absolutely took off as merchants out there started to look for other ways of accepting cash from their customers, of accepting transactions from their customers, aside from cash. Now, on the MSME segment, this is even more true. If you're an MSME and you're selling to your customers pre-pandemic, you were very much focused on cash transactions, both in the online space and in the offline space. During the pandemic, of course, that was thrown out of the window, and MSMEs really had to start looking for quick, easy ways to start accepting non-cash methods, whether it's from carded customers or wallet customers. And we did so by building our own app, which is the PayMaya Negosyo app, which enables a small business to get an account to accept transactions, provide all sorts of services like remittances and bills payment within a 5-minute application process, but also with plugins to the likes of Magento and Shopify and several other store builders online. In the face-to-face space, we brought the PayMaya One Lite device, which is a light touch device for card acceptance, as well as PayMaya QR and several other QRs. And we are, in fact, the launch member of QRPH, which is the national standard for interoperability of QR payments in the Philippines, and we're very proud to do so, together with the partnership of the Central Bank of the Philippines. Now, in the offline world, I mentioned earlier that for us, it's very important to provide grassroots services. We want to bridge the gap between those who are unconnected and the connected world. And in the Philippines, I see a split of virtually 50-50 between those who are connected, have a smartphone, are in a data connected area, are comfortable making a transaction on a mobile phone, and those, on the other hand, that are not comfortable to make a transaction on a mobile phone, or are in an unconnected area, or might not have a smartphone yet. And what we do for the latter category is, in order to include them, we have constructed or built a network of 38,000 agents across the country. They cover 92% of the 1,600 municipalities in the Philippines. And what they do is they provide services to their community where people can just walk in and pay their bills, buy airtime load for their mobile phone, make a payment, or even do other types of services like buying digital goods. And that really has connected people who were previously unconnected to the digital world and to the ability to make digital payments. Now, during the last year or so, we've partnered very heavily with the government, both with the national government agencies as well as with the local government units, in providing two types of services. The first one is the ability for government agencies and government units to accept payments from their constituents, whether it's for taxes or for regulatory commission licenses or a host of other services. Or the second bucket really was for the national government and for its local government units to pay people in need of aid, or to give financial aid to people in need. And we did so with the likes of the DSWD, with SSS and several other entities, as well as with local government units across the entire country. And that obviously during this period was a lifeline to small businesses and individuals alike. And it's something that obviously we're very, very proud of. So to summarize everything, our customers really happen to be the consumers, the enterprises, the governments, but especially the communities. And what we've done on the consumer side is we've really made it so easy for someone to get an account. Previously wasn't allowed to get to engage with the financial community or a financial provider via video. And we managed with the central bank to pilot this 5 years ago and to make it something that today is widely accepted in the Philippines, video KYC. We've managed to create the largest cash in and cash out network of touch points at 200,000, and obviously to provide accounts to around 29 million Filipinos. Now, on the enterprise side, we've provided, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to get a business in a box service that in 5 minutes allows you to get payment acceptance as well as disbursement services. On the government side, our relationship with some of the government agencies has been one of really making sure that we ease the process of doing business as well as the process of providing aid and funds directly to citizens. And in the communities, our community agents and stores that are branded with the PMI logo really provide those last mile services for the communities where previously only cash was king. So it has been fantastic to speak to you guys and to teach you a little bit more about what PMI does. And I'm very excited about 2021 and the prospects for the fintech industry in the Philippines. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Paolo. Our next speaker is 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐿, and he is the country head of FinScore. Interesting, the country is in great need of a credit scoring provider, and this is quite an innovative story that this fella has. The organization has been around for a while now, being developed with his team. Christo has such an interesting background. He comes here from Bulgaria, where he has been for the past number of years in Philippines. So an interesting story from another interesting guy. Please welcome 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐿, country head of FinScore. Welcome, Christo.
Thank you, Richard. Absolute pleasure to be invited at this event, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit more about our humble journey on the Philippines market so far. As you mentioned, and thank you for the great introduction as well. As you mentioned, FinScore has been actively involved in bridging the financial inclusion gap in the Philippines over the course of the last couple of years. And the way we do this in particular is through our motto of credit scoring for all, which is cornered, or which is basically structured in the belief that financial inclusion is impossible without access to credit, and access to credit is impossible without access to high quality data sources. And what data sources represent is information. It's mainly about information about individuals. And as such, basically, we have built this in order to share our mental model. I don't know whether the audience can see my screen, but we have built out this financial inclusion bridge, is what we call it. And the building blocks of that bridge are the different data sources that are available in within the context of a specific market, particularly within the context of a market such as an emerging market such as the Philippines. So at the very beginning, you see typically that individuals are like ghosts to financial institutions. They are faceless, they don't have much context about them, and typically in developed markets, this is mitigated through either the infrastructure built by the government, so different kind of credit registries or income registers, or through private credit bureaus, which are still being, those rails are still being developed in the Philippines. So our primary point over the last couple of years has been to actually prove that in the absence, or while those rails are being developed in a country such as the Philippines, or in the Philippines in particular, there are other sources of information that can help out and empower the individuals throughout their journey and throughout them becoming actively served by the financial institutions in the country. As you know, a huge portion of the Philippines is either unbanked or underserved by the traditional financial institutions. And one way in which this can be mitigated is by giving them the ability to be more empowered by using their data. And when we say data, what we talk about is a couple of different things. Now, some of the data that users are generating is visible through their usage of their mobile devices, or through how they browse the web, or on which social media networks they are, or on which they aren't. And all of this information already starts painting the picture on a very individual level. Then, in addition to that, there is quite a lot of information that is already available in the existing enterprises within the country. And this information allows potentially, it's hidden behind walled gardens most of the time, it's siloed, but it would allow, in theory and potentially, throughout the connection of the individuals with those data, it would allow them to use this data to be empowered for the purposes of financial inclusion. And how we do this, I'll talk a little bit more with our first use case on the Philippines market when it comes to smart telecom. But what's important to keep in mind is that these are ecosystems, these are networks, typically, and those can be electricity companies, phone or internet or water companies, retail providers or retail chains, with which the individuals already have past experience with, past relationship with, and past reputation on. And the reputation on those networks is something that's actually quite valuable and can be used when building relationships with financial institutions. How we've done it so far on the Philippines market has been by partnering with Smart Telecom as being the first, I would say, telco credit scoring provider in the Philippines, on the Philippines market so far, and essentially allowing users to share their reputation that they have gathered on the network of the mobile operator, and by using machine learning and big data algorithms, basically build out a credit score that shows their credit worthiness towards financial institutions in the absence of any other information about them. Why this is important? Well, particular and how this works is basically a credit score works something very similar to this. It's a band that comes from highest to lowest risk and typically returns a number that shows where on that scale a user is. But why this is important is because throughout the usage of our telco credit scores on the Philippines market so far, and since the beginning in 2018, we've delivered now actually close to 4 million scores. We have facilitated the disbursement through, of course, our clients and partners of about 500 million loans. All of this happens digitally and very quickly, and it essentially enables some of the individuals that otherwise would have been financially excluded, would have never have access to financial products, to tap into their reputation on the telco network and get approved for loans with their selected financial services providers. Now, the way and how this ties up with the financial inclusion bridge is that ultimately, as we discussed in the beginning, our client starts as a digital ghost. Once they climb up through the bridge, they are already turn into a person, turn into a client, someone that the bank or the financial institution that serves them can knows, understands, and has enough information about to serve profitably in a digital and a reliable way, which on its turn essentially leads to everyone along the chain benefit from the exercise. The borrower ultimately is able to, or the applicant is able to borrow funds by being empowered through their sharing of their data. The financial institution serves them profitably, the enterprise data providers can first, well, monetize their data, of course, but more important, empower individuals to use their reputation on their networks for financial inclusion, and FinScore fulfills its purpose.
Super, thanks, Christo. Yeah, very nice, Christo. And how, you say that roughly 4 million scores. So what kinds of organizations are you working with now?
Mm-hmm. Well, we are aiming to cover as broad spectrum of financial institutions in the Philippines as possible, but typically our clients are from the consumer lending segment, digital lenders. We work with several different banks and digital banks on the market as well. And we partner with a lot of the credit bureaus in the country in order to be able to successfully serve their own ecosystems and to create powerful data and analytics products that are combined with more traditional data sources.
Interesting. And your focus is on financial service providers. Are there other organizations that can use your products?
Yeah, one thing that is worth mentioning is that telco and alternative data credit scoring in particular is still in a fairly juvenile stage on the Philippines market. There is, it's a new innovative product. There's so far been just one provider being engaged in particular in telco credit scoring. And we have started with financial institutions and with financial services simply because we've seen that the need there is the biggest, both on the financial institution side as well as on the side of the borrowers and on the side of the individuals, really. But there's the use cases can range from various kinds of fraud preventions and verification cases, for e-commerce, for insurance, for marketing, and for all sorts of other purposes. We have just we are barely scratching the surface at the moment, both in terms of clients to the service, as well as the type of information that can be used to empower individuals on their journey for financial inclusion.
Absolutely. This is a very big breakthrough, I would say, Christo. It's very important what you're doing. So yeah, so well done. Well done to you guys. And how many people are in your group with you?
Right now, well, we are actually expanding our team from this year onwards. We are currently about 15 people, most of them with technical skill set, but we also have a very strong local Philippines team. We are a blend between Bulgarian and Filipinos within the business, and so far it has been working out great.
Okay, well, Christo, really nice to meet you, and yeah, keep up the great work. It's very exciting what you're doing, Christo. It's really going to make a big impact. Our next speaker is David Elmerall of Multisys Technologies, and this company and this guy have really made a name for themselves in the tech field. Many are calling it the most important tech company in the nation these days. So really an interesting story from an interesting fellow. Please welcome David Elmerall, the CEO of Multisys Technologies. Welcome, David.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for inviting me again to Asia CEO Forum. So, this pandemic has forced us a lot of changes, you know, especially last year has forced a lot of businesses to shift into online transactions and interactions. Everything is online now, Richard, from meetings to events, from classes to work, from selling to shopping, and of course, from cash to cashless, from paper to paperless. So everything is online now. And financial technologies are booming everywhere, not only in the Philippines, but in the entire world right now, to promote also financial inclusions and to promote also cashless, paperless, contactless, to make sure that this is able to perform or operate during the new normal. Aside from growing our company, visibility online, we have to adapt FinTech solutions nowadays. And FinTech has been crucial as this opens to more payment options. And payment options such as e-wallets, credit card, debit cards. In fact, we also have so-called cash on deliveries, but we have to still support over-the-counter payments and more ways to do payments online. But of course, payments is the end solution of this, but we have to provide them also their own platforms to use. That's why Multisys is quite busy nowadays developing a lot of websites, a lot of mobile applications, whether this is Android or iOS. And even companies that they are doing, manual processes before, they are now forced to go online as well. And we don't have choice but to provide an end-to-end solution for them to operate in the new normal. In Multisys, we have implemented several technologies last year, and we're able to launch multiple solutions to support our partners. And we also launched several platforms to make sure that they're able to do business at the same time. So Multisys is focusing now into partner empowerment model, especially this 2021. Actually, as we move into this kind of model, we support partners not for ourselves, but we believe that as we support them, they support us back. And as they grow their business, we also grow together. So we're really happy to have more partners last year. And in fact, we're expecting hundreds of partnerships again this year. So I'm quite excited and scared at the same time, of course, because as you do partnership, you have to prove to them that you are the right partner for them. That's why this year we are into simplification. So we simplify our process and to make sure that we're able to support them in a very simple way. We don't need to do everything, but as long as we have something to contribute to their company, as long as we have something to help them expedite their processes, making their operation more seamless and somehow add value to their company, I think that's the most important activity that we would like to perform this year. This year, we are focusing in launching 3 platforms, actually. The first one is the Starbucks platform. It's a new e-commerce platform, an end-to-end solution for 3 businesses. Whether you are a store, you are a restaurant, or you are a grocery. And this platform will be able to help you build your end-to-end e-commerce play and will be able to help you and guide you in a very simplified way for you to do an online shopping, cloud kitchen, and online grocery at the same time. So I think it's a passion that we want to contribute to the nation, because I think we've lost a lot of jobs and businesses last year. And I think this pandemic is not actually a loss to us. It taught us something very special for us to use technology as a slingshot, okay, to do business. And I think because of this technology that we're able to build, somehow we can contribute enablement and more revenue to our partners. Aside from the Starbucks platform, we're able to launch last year the Delivery Box platform. Delivery Box platform is actually a new platform that we're able to link more than 80,000 riders, so that aside from making your business online or do online selling, whether you're a food or goods business, will be able also to pick up your items or your merchandise, and we can also do the delivery for you. It's a door-to-door delivery. Last year, we were able to launch like 3 platforms last year. So I'm sure you will hear a lot of good news about the Starbucks and Delivery Box. It's a good tandem. It's a good marriage of e-commerce. So you have the one-stop self-service, online shopping, and online grocery system that you can customize it on your own. And you will have more than 80,000 riders to pick up and deliver also your goods to your clients. And of course, since we are integrated to multiple payment channels, your clients can do payments online as well. They can do cashless, or they can do e-wallet payment. They can also do credit card payment. They can also do bank payment. They can also do online banking payment, or they can do cash on delivery at the same time. So we're providing this platform so that we Filipinos, especially the SMEs that were affected last year, were able to revive our businesses. And we're so excited to launch these platforms to make sure that we're able to collaborate together. And that's what I'm so excited to, to discuss this morning. But since we have limited time, we will have more events through Rebecca and Richard this year to introduce these new platforms to enable and empower more SMEs. Lastly, we're able to launch also late last year our BillBox platform. BillBox is a smart billing and collection system. So meaning instead of you sending paper statement of accounts to your clients, you'll be able to send them email or SMS with your bill in it. So that aside from accepting that electronic billing system through your mobile or to your email, you'll be able to pay immediately your bill without going out at all. So these are the things that we've been doing now, we've been doing for the past couple of months. And we're supporting also several partners in the FinTech industry. In fact, me, myself, I am working with 2 FinTech organizations. And as I meet partners, as I collaborate to multiple partners, we're so excited because we find this good synergetic businesses. And we don't need to compete. It's like merging these strengths all together and merging the ideas. And as we collaborate, we'll learn from them and they'll learn from us. So it's a good model that me, myself, I'm learning from a lot of partners. I'm learning also from Rebecca and Richard, and they guided me also along the way. So you see, I think with this pandemic, it's not about competition anymore. It's all about merging the strengths of everyone. And as we grow together, we maintain and we sustain our business at the same time. So not only are you making your payment accessible or transaction more seamless to a tech-savvy environment, but also helping the traditional players as well and making them business grow. And as they grow, we also grow together. Yet, despite integrating with thousands of partners nowadays, we can only do so much, But together with our strong partners, right now we have more than 80 technology partnerships. And this will grow in the next couple of months. And as we merge our strength together, I think we can help more people. And as they help me, somehow we also help them back. That's why we are partnering with a lot of tech businesses nowadays to help us and to help them and helping each other. It's all about helping each other nowadays. That's what we're doing. That's going to be the key to rising back in this pandemic. So it's bayanihan. And we can help each other only in FinTech, but with other vertical and horizontal businesses and multiple industries as well. So that's my insight and my short statements or idea that I would like to contribute this FinTech Forum to Asia CEO. Thank you, Richard and Rebecca.
Okay, thank you very much, David Elmeral. And we wish you well in your many, sometimes confusing ventures because there's so many, but keep up the great work you are doing and making such an impact on the nation. All right, our next speaker is PJ Castro. He is Managing Director of JustPay2, and it's a very interesting digital payments and money transfers company for both individuals and businesses. And I didn't know about it, and I'll tell you, we signed up ourselves, and it is so easy. It is difficult sometimes to pay your bills and simple things like that, but this group really has made what looks like a breakthrough on this. So please welcome PJ Castro, Managing Director of JustPay2. Welcome, PJ.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and privilege to be on your event. Thank you so much. Let me get started. So thank you so much for having us on your program. So I would like to introduce our company, which is JustPay2. I think we're a relatively new player in the industry. We started the company about 4 years ago, but we effectively turned on the system January last year. Fortunately, it was right in time for COVID because obviously because of the pandemic, there was a big need for our product and our service. And so we're very fortunate to get it up and running just in time before lockdown. So what exactly do we do? So when you asked me to present what we were doing and how we added value, I thought of first presenting what we do, how we added value to our customers, and also more importantly, how we added value to our co-peers in the industry, namely the banks and also the other wallets who are our peers in the industry. So we are a payment platform which is regulated by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. We operate as an OPS. We're PCI DSS certified, and we're also registered with under the AMLAC. So what exactly do we do? So basically what we do is we create payment portals or payment pages, as what we call them, for any business of any size to accept payments easily through a payment address. So what do they mean by that? So this is, so for example, I'm going to use you as example. So you signed up last week with us. So currently right now you have your URL is JustPay2 Asia CEO. And your settlement bank is BPI. So it simply means that anyone, you particular, can receive payments through your URL without needing to give your bank account. And the beauty about this is you can now accept all forms of payment, credit card, debit card, GCash, PayMaya, over the counter to our partners, GrabPay, and money gets remitted into your settlement account, which is BPI. Again, instead of having to give your account details to your customers, you just have to tell them to go to JustPay2 Asia CEO. We try to make it as easy for both you and for your customers to make a payment. So I think being the newest one of the newer ones in the group. So I'm going to show you some of our partners. So I mentioned that we're used by companies of all sizes. These range from big companies, just Meralco, Globe, Smart. So again, if you want to pay your bills, instead of you having to download any app, we're not app based. You could now simply make payments through JustPay2 Meralco, JustPay2 Globe, JustPay2 PLD, JustPay2 Smart. The beauty about this also is that if you have parents or family who's abroad and who needs to pay, you would like to pay for your bills, they don't have to remit money. They could simply just go to it works with any desktop, it works with any mobile device, JustPay2 Meralco, and they could make a payment simply by putting the reference number and their card details. It works with debit, any Visa or MasterCard would do. So it's globally accepted. As we all know, we're also as of last year, I think the trend of the government was to go cashless in transportation in the RFIDs. So we also partnered with AutoSweep, EasyTrip, and Big Beep cards, so that motorists could now actually load their RFIDs through our system. Again, it's not app based. They simply just go to JustPay2 EasyTrip RFID. It's so easy to memorize and put in their account details, account number, select a payment method, and make the payment, and automatically their RFID gets loaded. We're used by several SMEs. Just to give you some examples, we're used by large corporations, chain brands like Fridays. We're used by smaller groups like My Tea Cafe. These are SMEs that signed up to use our system. We're used by brands, and we're also used by fellow tech companies such as Aid, who does medical professional services for their consumers. We're also used by donation groups, so JustPay2 Red Cross, JustPay2 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀, KN Movement, and Action Against Hunger. So again, the beauty about the system is that instead of Red Cross having to give you their account details, they just say, you want to make a payment, go to JustPay2 Red Cross. It accepts. It's easy to memorize, easy to remember, easy to recall. The donors go to JustPay2 Red Cross. It's accessible worldwide, and they can now receive payments from anyone. Donations rather, from anyone in the world in real time. Again, like the others, this accepts all forms of donation payments: credit card, debit card, GCash, PayMaya, over-the-counter payments, GrabPay as well. So we want to be the most complete in terms of sources of fund. So for our SMEs, instead of them having to establish that relationship with each payment provider, they sign up with us and pretty much everything is already embedded into the system. We're also used by professionals. Again, just some more examples of users of our system. So this is perfect for receiving payments for events, for tickets. We're used by several doctors, especially right now during the pandemic. There are a lot of online consultations. So several doctors are using our system to receive payments so that their patients don't need to do bank transfers, and they could accept no credit card payments online. Again, the beauty of our system is that prior to us, they were using other payment solutions, but through our system, the payment goes directly into their nominated settlement bank account. Could be a bank and could be a wallet of their choice. I'll explain that later in more detail. So what is JustPay2? It's we cater to individuals, SMEs, and enterprises of all sizes through what we call a payment address. This payment address is something that is fixed. It is something that is permanently with them, and it's something that they could just easily tell their clients or customers, and to get that's how they get paid. So let me talk right now how we add value to businesses, especially during the pandemic. So as we know, from March to May was the lockdown. There was no revenue for customers. There was high cost, and it was very uncertain. So again, we were very fortunate to be up and running before this pandemic. From June onwards, that was the start when the company started opening up the restaurants, and economy started slowly opening up. So we spoke to a lot of these merchants who were using our system, and we asked them exactly what they needed. So these restaurants, these merchants, these retailers also had to modify their business. Similar with us, even though we are the quote unquote, we're now a demand, we still had to modify our business to add value to serve our customers in the best way possible. So what do I mean by that? I'll give an example. Usually, like restaurants like these, for example, they needed, for them to receive payments, it was very cumbersome. They could only receive either GCash, and it was a direct, they had to do bank-to-bank transfer, and they had to book a delivery service to actually fulfill those orders. So again, in our end, our core business is payments, but we modified our system to include also delivery and a fulfillment service. So the difference of us, so instead of Roast Italian Bistro having to give their complicated instructions to make an order, they'll simply tell their customers, go to JustPay2 Roast Italian, and there's a delivery component embedded into it. So we also modified our business to add features to best serve our users and our customers. So this is how it looks like. So this is an example of an existing user of ours. They're a restaurant in BGC. So in our system, there's a delivery function embedded into the system. And the beauty about this is that it's free. Their customers pay for delivery charges, and we don't charge a percentage of sales. So unlike the current setup right now, we asked them what is the biggest pain point, and they said that it was very expensive to hire the current systems out there. So we decided to help them by giving pretty much this feature for free. Another problem that was in the market was that the contact room services. As you know, if you go to a restaurant, the waiter gives you a menu, you order, the food is brought to the table, and you pay using your cash or card. And the chances of you getting contaminated because of contact is very high. So given this, we thought of also innovating the market to add value into both our product and to our merchant services. So what we did is we created a QR code for all of our merchants that they could simply scan, so that their customers can sit down in a restaurant, scan the QR code, which is in their table. Again, this is not app-based, so they don't have to download any app or top up any wallet to use our system. They scan the QR code, it redirects them to the menu of that restaurant. Food is brought to the table and consumed, and they could pay using JustPay2. So even on our end, we evolved our system to actually accommodate the needs and wants of our current merchants. Now, because we realized also that we also had the menu ready incorporated in the system, what we did right now also is we also made it available online with delivery. So our core business is actually payments, but given the need of our merchants, we innovated to actually better serve them properly. So even on our end, we also had to modify and we had to evolve our business. So another problem we were faced, that they faced, was multiple payment options and managing all these payment providers. Instead of a merchant establishing the relationship between GCash and Paymaya and all the other payment options, they get a JustPay2 account, and pretty much everything is there, and it's easy to manage in one dashboard. So another thing I wanted to show is that how we added value to our partners in the industry. So we thought of, when we started the business, we believe that collaboration and not competition is the way to move forward. We thought we specifically said that we didn't want to be an app, we didn't want to be a digital bank, and we didn't want to be a wallet for the mere purpose of partnering with all the digital banks and all the wallets in the market out there today. So what do I mean by that? So if you notice, I'm showing you again some of the users of our system: FinTech PH, EasyTrip RFID, MyCafe, and Red Cross. If you notice at the bottom right of their page, you will actually see what settlement bank they are using. I'm going to give examples. So for FinTech PH, they're using Union Bank. For EasyTrip, they're with BDO. For MyCafe, it's GCash. And for Red Cross, it's Metrobank. That simply means if I make a donation or if I make a payment to any of these companies, those are the banks that we deposit the money to. But simply speaking, the more ways to get paid, the more users, the more deposits to the banks and wallets. So we don't see ourselves as a competition to the banks and the wallets. Rather, we see ourselves as a partner because one, we're basically a cash-in solution for the banks or wallets. So business accounts of the banks and the wallets can now sign up with us. And once they use us, we actually deposit the money into the bank as opposed to take money out of the bank. Same also as PayMaya and GCash. If this company signed up with their GCash account, so if I make a payment to just pay to MyCafe, we credit the GCash account. So we are a cash-in solution for the GCash account. On the other end of the spectrum, we're also indirectly merchant acquiring for GCash and PayMaya. So what do I mean by that? So if we have 10,000 users, all those 10,000 users can now receive GCash and PayMaya payments, GrabPay payments. So we're adding more value to them by adding the potential for more transactions for their systems. So hopefully we're not seen as a competition, but rather for both ends, we do merchant acquiring for both GCash, PayMaya, and UBX also as our over-the-counter payment. So these are some of our milestones. Again, we started 2015. We started as a prototype, but we effectively turned on the system early last year. So fortunately, we were just in time for lockdown. From early 2020 to December right now, we've closed a couple of key accounts. I think our latest one was Petron. And we look forward to more partners in the future. So if you get started, please contact us at hello@justpay2, and we'll be very happy to accommodate your accounts.
Okay, good, PJ. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Simon Ng, the president and CEO of OmniPay. This is the country's largest issuer of prepaid payment cards and known as one of the big innovative forces in financial inclusion for the nation. Simon is actively involved with Bastion Payment Systems as the vice chairman. This organization is implementing the country's new real-time gross settlement system for the BSP, the country's central bank. So he's a very tapped-in fellow. So please welcome Simon Ng, CEO of OmniPay. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks, Richard. Just a quick background. OmniPay was established as a non-bank financial institution in 2009, and we obtained our e-money license in 2012. We're proudly built and owned in the Philippines. Today, we have offices in Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Vancouver. We're somewhat different from the other players in the industry in that we operate purely on a business-to-business model. Today, we're members of JCB, UnionPay, Discover, Diners, BankNet, and Eurogiro. We are issuers of physical and virtual cards, and we also do acquiring, both with POS terminals and also virtually through e-commerce channels. Our technology is built and developed in the Philippines. As Richard mentioned earlier, our mother company of OmniPay is Bastion Payment Systems. It is the outsourced service provider for all the technology of OmniPay, built from the ground up. So that includes the physical data centers, the core engine, the application layer, including a card management system, payment gateway, remittance platform, and all the reporting that comes with it. We also, as Richard mentioned, own a joint venture with a contract to deliver the new real-time gross settlement system, also known as PhilPass Plus, to the Central Bank of the Philippines middle of this year, likely in the July timeframe. This is the foundational payment system for the entire country. OmniPay's primary lines of businesses, as Richard mentioned, is issuing prepaid payment cards, but we also do e-commerce acquiring for larger complex merchants such as airlines, including Philippine Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Korean Airlines, and the like. We also have a agent network, both domestic and international, mainly to support the remittances from our overseas Filipino workers. From a FinTech perspective, I guess we were FinTech before that was even coined as a term in terms of the jargon. But most of the FinTechs we evaluated in the early days were mostly tech and very little fin. I guess part of the challenge is that although payments is global, the nature of payments is still inherently local. We see a lot of regional differences in how people pay, and certainly the regulators, including the central banks of the various countries, impose different regulations for different activities across different geographies. That said, change is accelerating. Credit cards took 28 years to reach 50 million users. YouTube took 10 months. Pokemon Go took 19 days. So not only is change constant, it is getting faster and faster. So some of my thoughts, I guess, regarding the trends of FinTech. We see the rise of domestic payment systems. These will take away market share from the international card networks. Locally in the Philippines, we see InstaPay and PesoNet. These two systems have played a key role in helping a lot of our population cope with the lockdown effect in terms of being able to provide interbank fund transfer services, either in real time like InstaPay or in batch like in PesoNet. Moreover, we have PHQR now live for peer-to-peer transfers, with the peer-to-merchant or person-to-merchant being launched later this year. Another trend we see in terms of the domestic payment systems is the move to link regionally. You see the Asia Payment Network as a consortium of domestic ATM networks. BankNet is currently the Philippine representative. But we also see plans for interoperability of QR codes, even as we only begin to launch our own. There is the Bharat QR from India, there is QRIS from Indonesia, SGQR in Singapore. Sooner or later, these QR codes will also become interoperable and increase the velocity of change. Some of the interesting signals for the future that we're monitoring closely. One is the diminishing fee-based income opportunities for fintechs. So we see the central bank has changed the ATM charging model. We see the move, I guess, towards no fee or low fee at the point of sale, whether through QR or point of sale machines with the payment cards. This is still something of discussion with the industry and the central bank, but we do expect at lower levels in terms of micropayments, it will be free. So it will be somewhere between the 400 peso to 1,000 peso range. Transactions under that size will become free moving forward, probably later this year. The other trend that we see are monitoring closely is the move from offshoring versus migration. So obviously this will have material impact on the Philippines with the remittance flows. This is a big societal trend, I guess, that was accelerated by the pandemic as well. There's also regulatory push towards open banking. So we already see this in some countries, but in the Philippines, our expectation is that we will see the central bank push for it before the year is out. There's also the growing interest in terms of these issuance of digital fiat currency that are known as central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Probably one of the world leaders for this right now is China, but certainly countries like Canada, Singapore are taking keen interest and looking to launch something interoperable already. The Philippines is also taking a close look from the BSP's perspective. So this is again something that we're watching very closely in terms of the technology that will be impacting our industry. Another exciting one, actually, very exciting one, that I think will fundamentally upend and transform our industry is quantum computing. Most of our existing payment infrastructure is based on encryption that's developed on classical computers. Now, how that classical computer encryption will hold up against quantum computing remains to be seen. But my expectation is we will have to almost reinvent the wheel in terms of moving forward from classical computing into quantum computing as that becomes more mature in the next few years. So I guess the takeaway that I want to leave the audience is that the pandemic accelerated adoption of digital payments. The BSP is pushing very, very hard at this, and they're actually targeting 50% retail payments being digital by 2023. They're so serious that the central bank actually created a new sector specifically to drive digital adoption. It's called the Payments and Currency Management sector. And we are expecting a new deputy governor to be appointed sometime this month, actually, to head up this new sector. That's how serious the BSP is looking at this, and that's how hard they will be pushing. But at the end of the day, for my peers in the industry in FinTech and the ones that are maybe looking to get into it, my advice would be to really define your value proposition. At the end of the day, it has to make payments or finance faster, cheaper, safer, or more convenient. If you can't answer any one of those questions positively, then I think you have to re-examine the business model and the technology. Thank you, Richard, for having me.
Thanks, Simon. That's okay. That's interesting. So they're really going to make transaction fees zero at the MSE level, or what is that you'd call it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think part of it is to encourage adoption at the MSME level. Yes. Part of it is also to help our countrymen, given the severe economic impact of the lockdown on that were disproportionately affected the MSMEs as well.
Certainly.
So I think the main point of discussion right now between the central bank and the industry is more around the threshold defining that micropayment.
Yes, that's a big topic of discussion, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think it should be, at the low end or at the higher end of the range?
Well, I'm kind of torn, to be honest, and that's why I was hoping to see some of the data after the lockdown was somewhat eased, because we were expecting a better uptick in terms of the volume of transactions and the value of transactions going through PesoNet and InstaPay. Yes, it did increase during lockdown, but it didn't increase as much as I thought it would.
Okay.
And at that time, everything was free, right? There was no threshold. All transactions were free. And so I'm kind of wondering, why are we only seeing this sort of increase? I would have thought it would be 1,000. So we're trying to determine, is it because the pandemic was unexpected, the lockdowns were unexpected, and so people weren't ready to be on the InstaPay or PesoNet systems? The banks themselves and the other electronic money issuers may also not have been ready, so it was kind of a mad scramble, and maybe that slowed down some of the adoption. And so I'm really curious, because some of the banks have started charging fees again, I believe as of end of September or October. I want to see the data to see how the volumes will be impacted. Will they continue to be growing, or will that be a material impact in terms of the value and the number of transactions? Because if it slows, or if it actually shrinks, then that tells you we're very price sensitive. But if it doesn't, then maybe there's a strong business case to be made. So for me, the jury's still out. I'm hoping to see more data to be able to make that sort of assessment.
Okay, and how far along is Philippines then compared to some of the, I mean, I know China has had a big success, of course, and India's coming along, but compared to I don't know, others around here, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. How are we doing, Simon?
We're very far behind. We're very cash heavy. Yeah. Part of it, I think our challenge is twofold. One is we're an archipelago, right?
Yes.
So, I think the only country comparable to us would be Indonesia with 17,000 islands, and roughly 2.5 times our population. So with that type of geographical structure and the size of the population, Indonesia and the Philippines are the two biggest in ASEAN in terms of the population. It makes it messy to try to migrate anything, right? So that's one thing. But one advantage Indonesia has over the Philippines is they actually have a functional national ID.
Okay.
Based on biometric. So they call it the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐾 in Indonesia. The Philippine government is pushing to implement one now. Congress passed the law already, but it's not yet operational. So we're hoping once that's up and about and in production and the financial industry is able to access it, that should help the onboarding of new clients in terms of the KYC process. And that should make it a lot easier.
Okay.
And then we hope to see the digital adoption accelerate even faster once that's in place.
Certainly. Okay, so it's a good story ahead then, and you're in a good position, it seems, Simon, to continue to do well.
Well, there's a lot of work, and we certainly welcome all the players. It's we're coming from a position where, as late as 5 years ago, we were only at 1 or 2% digital payments for retail, 75% unbanked. But I think our numbers have improved dramatically in terms of the population, the percentage of the population having transaction accounts now for electronic payments.
Okay, good news. Yes, really a pleasure, Simon. So really good to see you, and please take care of yourself, of course. So
will do.
Our next speaker is Martha Sazon. She is President and CEO of Mint, and she oversees what is called the #1 financial app in the nation, GCash, with, I read, more than 33 million users and ⁸ trillion pesos in gross transaction value. So just a tremendous success and really leading the way to financial inclusion for Philippines. Martha has strong background. She's been with Globe Telecom for quite a number of years, 12 or so if I recall. Also GSK, Del Monte, premier companies earlier in her career. So with a story on how she is going to really move ahead financial inclusion for Filipinos, please welcome Martha Sazon, CEO of Mint. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you for the introduction, Richard. Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak in this year's Ultimate FinTech Forum. I appreciate the opportunity to share the GCash story. Well, 2020 was a tough year for everyone, especially as the pandemic forced us to stay home. We all had to make adjustments in the way we did everyday things like purchasing essentials and paying for utilities. The need for a safe, contactless mode of payment was never more stark or apparent as it was in 2020. It created a tremendous demand, therefore, for digital services. GCash was at the forefront of the new normal, and we are glad that we are able to respond and provide Filipinos a safe, secure, and convenient platform for their needs. My presentation will show the progress we have made in our pursuit of financial inclusion so far and what exciting things we have in store for this 2021. So as I said earlier, GCash is here to provide a safe and relevant financial services via cashless ecosystem, especially during this new normal. The pandemic has affected all of us and has impacted Filipino livelihood and the economy. The 9.5% GDP drop in 2020 is the worst fall since World War II. Unemployment rate is at 10%. That's 5 million Filipinos rendered jobless. We have 26% MSMEs which have been fully closed. And up to 78% of businesses, in fact, are now fully or partially closed. That is 4.5 million businesses that we are speaking of. Currently, we are at the 12th straight month of lockdown. This has brought about the following behavioral shifts among consumers and businesses alike who were largely forced to stay at home. The first one is the non-contact revolution. I'm sure you guys have all felt this. As the quarantine progressed, people needed a way to pay for their essentials, such as groceries and utility bills. GCash provided an easy, safe, and secure mode of payment. We have also seen emerging virtual communities that includes the rise of online sellers. As numerous Filipinos lost their jobs, Filipinos turned to online means like Viber, Facebook, and Instagram selling groups to find a way to make a living. GCash provided these new entrepreneurs with a safe, contactless way to accept payments for their goods. We are happy to see that we have empowered at least 600,000, and I think now it's at 700,000, social sellers on our P2P platform. The financially proactive youth, that's what we've also seen. Young people are now very concerned about the pandemic's impact on their financial security, how they can preserve and even grow their hard-earned money. GCash has become very relevant during these trying times, given the digital empowerment that it provides. So we continue to help to keep the economy moving through relevant products that complement each key trend that I mentioned. First is shopping, paying bills, buying load digitally at the comfort of your home. Secondly, empowering merchants, businesses to accept cashless payments via send money and bank transfers. Lastly, providing easy access to financial services like GSave, Invest Money, insurance, and even G-Credit. Waves of virality in 2020 as GCash have become relevant through various phases of the year for the year. It's evident in 4 big events experienced in 2020. First wave is the essentials during lockdown. GCash was a lifeline to many Filipinos who stayed at home for their safety. With our convenient and relevant products, we reached top 3 free apps across Google and Apple stores, only behind Zoom and TikTok. We reached virality through memes, like having more GCash receipts in their phone galleries rather than vacation pictures. Second wave is the government's financial aid tool. So one of our proudest moments during this pandemic is seeing how the team responded to all the crises happening around us. With increased awareness of our product, plus our established ecosystem, we were awarded with the most funds for social amelioration program disbursement and other public sector aid initiatives. We were able to disburse over 16 billion pesos to more than 2 million Filipinos with the help of the Department of Social Welfare and Development and local government units like the cities of Makati, Quezon City, and Taguig. Users posting on social media about how the hashtag Ayuda is real and how GCash helped during these trying times. Third wave that we've seen is providing aid via digital bayanihan. GCash played a huge part in the collection of cash aid to help over 3 million Filipinos affected by last year's Super Typhoon Ulysses. We ran campaigns hashtag Ulysses PH Aid and hashtag 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓮 to collect over 21 million in donations. And that excludes when even celebrities like Vice Ganda, Angel Locsin with millions of followers, and even our Vice President Lenny Robredo and our NGO partners like Red Cross, Kaya Natin, promoted their own donation drives using GCash to collect cash aids. At the peak of the typhoon, GCash even trended on social media as an easy way to donate to the victims. Last but not least, in terms of waves of virality, we also saw Merry GCash as becoming viral in terms of sending joy the past holiday. Before we left 2020 behind, GCash celebrated our last wave with our successful Merry GCash campaign that helped spread some joy during Christmas. Aside from exciting prizes that were given away, GCash again gained relevance through more memes, especially as many used GCash to ask for pamasko or gifts through GCash from their relatives. With the massive reach of our campaigns, we recorded our highest single-day login at 7.7 million, actually more than 7.7 million logins last December 12. And you know what that means. That's a 12.12 sale. As we become more relevant to more Filipinos, especially during the pandemic, we cemented our position as the #1 financial app in the Philippines. How did we do this? Well, we built an established platform and ecosystem with the multiple relevant products and services. As you would know, in the middle of the pandemic last year, last June, I think, we even migrated our platform with everyone virtually working at home. We did the almost impossible of shifting our platform to a more stable platform, A+, with the help of our financial stakeholders, right? And the services that we have now could be bunched up into 4. First is like an everyday payments and transfers. We have convenient options to buy essentials and do errands with just a few clicks in the app. Also, we have financial services, first mover in providing accessible financial services like G-Credit, savings, insurance, and even investments. Last but not least, digital lifestyle. We also promote a digital lifestyle by giving users access to their favorite apps without needing to download multiple apps through our newly launched G-Life. And more on this later. With that, we're experiencing record growth and ended 2020 with from 20 million users in January 2020, we have grown our user base to more than 33 million. That's 1 in 3 Filipinos. With that, our monthly active users are 10x higher than in 2017. In terms of the number of transactions, usage has grown up to 1,000% in relevant use cases such as save money, online shopping, bank transfers, and online cash-in. We are being used at least twice a day by our active users. This shows that using GCash has become as frequent and natural to people as using their everyday wallets. As mentioned earlier, we have around 700,000 merchants joining GCash to accept payments faster. That's around 130,000 offline QR and 600,000 social sellers. Also, we just hit 1 trillion GTV in early December. That's 2 times higher than our past 3 years' performance combined. With the immense number of Filipinos using and trusting our platform, not only have we topped the financial app category when it comes to active users, but we are now ahead of global social media and entertainment apps like TikTok, Twitter, Netflix, and Grab, based on App Annie. And more recently, we've even surpassed Spotify and Viber. So imagine a proudly Pinoy company topping these companies. This shows how FinTech, especially GCash, has become part of Filipinos' everyday lives. We've made strides in 2020 to make us a step closer to our dream of becoming a cashless nation. My next few slides will show how we plan to continue this momentum throughout 2021. So we've mapped out and launched new initiatives to properly usher in the new year. First is the P2P QR. We want to enable more social sellers to accept payments through our platform. The recent launch of personal QR, or what we call P2P QR, can help us target this segment. With personal QR, you can personalize your own QR to share with your customers for a safer transaction instead of giving away your mobile number. We've also seen virality for our seasonal campaigns. To replicate the success of our Merry GCash campaign, we released relevant promos for both Chinese New Year and even Valentine's Day. So probably you've seen lots of materials on sending ang pao. We even shared your fortunes for the different animal signs. And during Valentine's Day, we released several materials that had memes and hugot lines that could help also when you send a clip to your loved one. Also, we had a campaign of sending 143 or 1 peso and 43 cents to your loved one if you don't have a Valentine's gift yet. We are at the forefront of providing easy access to financial services. These days, having peace of mind is priceless, and having the opportunity to manage your finances from the comfort of your home is essential. We have GSave. Our users enjoy the best savings interest rate in the country with up to 4% per annum. That's the best in the market right now. We ended 2020 with over 3 million users having opened a savings account with us. This month, we even launched a promo to provide free life insurance with a coverage depending on the user's average daily balance. So imagine you're saving your money, getting the best interest, and to top it all off, you get a free life insurance, right? Next is G-Insure. G-Insure allows users to easily cover themselves and their loved ones as we offer life and health insurance for just 39 pesos. That's less than $1. Over 100,000 policies have been purchased on GCash. We just launched a new product with Sing Life. It's a personal accident insurance that covers you for 36 months if you get into an accident. For as low as 418 pesos, you will be covered for 10,000 pesos a month. Last but not least is G-Invest, another product that is gaining popularity with already more than 1 million accounts investing. For as low as 50 pesos, you can already invest in a money market fund. And what's even more exciting is that we have new funds on the way that allows you to own a part of some of the local and global brands like Apple, Google, Samsung, Ayala, Globe, Meralco, etc. With this new set of products, we want to make investments more compelling, like it's part of your self-care routine. And to continue to engage our users, we want them to fully immerse into the digital lifestyle. This is where G-Life, our mini program play, comes in. So at a time when every business is digitalized their operations, G-Life app-in-app concept provides a digital footprint for businesses. Through various mini apps, users can now shop, eat, and play without having to download multiple apps. Of course, every user wants to save their phone memory gigs, right? For businesses, G-Life can help them reach a new digitally savvy base as we can provide data-driven approach to marketing to drive the right customers to your mini app. We also have a customizable user experience inside the GCash app to help maintain your brand identity. And an easy one-click payment experience for your customers for seamless checkout. I'd like to share some successful executions we've had with a few of our partners. KFC, which we implemented a wow promo just yesterday. We had a strong collaborative marketing initiatives to push users to order their favorite KFC meals right in the GCash app. There was an overwhelming surge during yesterday's 50% promo where we garnered more than thousands of orders in just one day. Unique daily page views went up in the tens of thousands and 100,000s. I just cannot disclose the exact figures, but really multiples of growth. GOMO, we partnered with GOMO, a pure digital telco, to help customers order their SIMs. 80% of their SIM orders were in fact driven through GCash. Since its recent launch, we already have over 20 partners in G-Life from various industries like food, e-commerce, telco, and more. We are excited to bring in more big names as our partners in the near future to make this proposition even more relevant to our growing user base. Mostly, what I have shown you so far has been GCash as a business. Let me now tell you about GCash as a member of the community. Sharing with you a story that really warmed my heart as it made us see our efforts towards financial inclusions come into reality. Stories of fishermen accepting GCash as a mode of payment went viral on social media last month. It's amazing to see the adoption of our product even in far-flung areas. So now, as they say in Filipino, nasa dalampasigan na rin tayo. Now, even our basic mode of transportation like tricycles are accepting GCash too. And that's not just in Luzon, that's in far-flung Mindanao area. In summary, 2020 has been a year of immense growth for GCash. The entire GCash team takes pride in a job well done, but most of all, we are grateful that we were able to make things a little easier for Filipinos. In 2021, we look forward to continuing on our path of finance for all, with relevant products and services that will hopefully make Filipinos' everyday lives better. Again, thank you for having me here. Wishing you all a better 2021.
Thank you very much, Martha Cezanne. What a story. And this is a company that is really leading the way for financial inclusion. I mean, we see just fantastic things for this organization in its continued growth. So thank you again, Martha. All right, our next speaker is John Januzak. John is president and CEO of UBX, which is the FinTech venture studio of Union Bank Philippines that many people consider the leader in the FinTech sector for the banking industry. So we're really pleased to have John. He came here initially to run the very successful Manulife shared services operation. He's been here for years, really loves Philippines. He loved it so much he decided to stay and run UBX. So very pleased to have John. So welcome, John, President and CEO of UBX. Glad to have you, John.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you, and thanks for having me today. I thought I would start, and a great introduction on UBX, but I thought I would start and augment that a little bit and tell you a little bit about what we're doing in response to the shifting face of banking in particular, but really the changes and the transformation that's occurring, not just here in the Philippines, but across the globe. So UBX is the venture studio and the corporate venture capital arm of Union Bank of the Philippines. Union Bank of the Philippines is one of the top universal banks in the Philippines. They have been on a digital transformation journey for some time. And UBX is really a response to the question, what's next? And so what we've done is we've spun UBX out. We are incubating and bringing FinTech ventures to market, but we're also investing in other FinTech ventures through our venture capital fund. So in that way, UBX is not just another FinTech. Our hypothesis and our response to the changing face of banking and financial services and trends, again, not just in the Philippines, but around the world, is a hypothesis where we believe that the future of financial services is invisible. So even though a lot of banks, and we feel that Union Bank is definitely leading in this category, have become digital. Union Bank, for example, you no longer have to go to a physical branch to do banking at all. You can download the app, both as an individual, even as a business, bank digitally, immediately. But we feel that in the future, that banking experience will become more and more invisible. It will be, in fact, be embedded into the activities and experiences that actually matter to individuals and to businesses. And these days, more and more, the experiences and the activities that really matter to individuals and businesses are being facilitated on digital platforms. And so at UBX, we are building these digital platforms where individuals and businesses, typically in ecosystems or communities that are digitally or financially underserved. So we're building platforms for those communities. But at the same time, we are aggregating and virtualizing financial services across multiple providers so that we can embed them into the platforms of others. And that's another important reason why we spun UBX out. While we share the same brand affinity and the same culture and heritage as Union Bank, we are open. UBX by design is open. And in fact, and I'll talk about some of our platforms, we have multiple banks and multiple lenders that are using the platforms that we have developed. And then lastly, with digital, you are naturally well poised to work beyond borders. And in fact, at UBX, we operate not just in the Philippines, we're incorporated in Singapore. We have staff in Singapore. And we've made a lot of, I talked about our corporate venture capital fund. We make most of our investments actually through our Singaporean entity. So we're not just investing in the Philippines, we're investing across Asia Pacific. So I thought I'd share some trends and our response to them. So this one's kind of obvious. With COVID, there has been a tremendous change in consumer behavior. And while the pandemic has been an unfortunate situation from a business perspective and from a consumer behavior perspective, for the Philippines and for Asia, we believe that this is really a golden age of e-commerce. And so some examples of the ventures that we are taking to market in our venture studio is Bucks. Bucks is an embeddable e-commerce payment and logistics platform. So, that sounds fancy, but I'll make it really, really simple. If you're an SME, or even if you're a larger company, if you want to accept credit cards, allow people to use their GCash and other popular wallets to perhaps pay over the counter or through their bank, you need to establish relationships with all of those channels. What we've done with Bucks is we aggregate all of those diverse payment channels into a single, simple, easy to use platform. And it can be as easy to use as someone who is literally putting their goods on Instagram and messaging through Facebook Messenger and Viber. And so through Bucks, you can create a payment link, which will allow them to pay through all of those channels. And then, of course, it can be as sophisticated as using Bucks programmatically. We have an API, and so larger platforms will embed Bucks into their businesses by using the API. We have the largest number of payment platforms in the Philippines, and we represent actually the largest over-the-counter network of over-the-counter channels in the country. We've also created a e-commerce platform called Centro. And the reason we did this is after we created Bucks, we realized that there are people who are just starting out. And by the way, some of the people just starting out because of COVID were actually pretty decent sized outfits. But they start out with really, really simple, putting their menu on Viber, and I alluded to, the ghost kitchens and the small businesses that are on Facebook and Instagram. And then there are businesses that have they have the means or they have the sophistication, and they're using things like Shopify, WooCommerce, other e-commerce platforms. They're multi-channel, they're on Lazada, Shopee, etc. But there's a big gap in the middle. And so what we did is we created Centro as a response to that. You can go to 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓿. You can literally have an e-commerce store and site up in under 10 minutes. It has checkout, inventory management, order management, and of course, payments across the largest array of payment channels and delivery built in out of the box. So in 10 minutes, your stuff is up, people are ordering, you can take all payments, and you can within the app, you can arrange for that to be picked up and delivered. So the logistics are built right in. The second trend, and I alluded to this right at the beginning, is the fact that more than ever, the experiences and activities that really matter are being driven by digital platforms. And whether it's e-commerce or not, we're really living in a platform economy. And so one of the platforms that we've built specifically to be embedded into the platforms of not just ourselves, but of others is 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀. Now, 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 is kind of short for Seek Capital. In this pandemic, small businesses, in true Philippine fashion and in true Philippine resiliency, have filled the gap by getting online. And these SMEs are driving the economy more than ever, but they're also acutely affected by access to credit and working capital. And we wanted to address that credit gap. And so Seek Capital is literally for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to seek capital. Nice little play on words here. 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀, pardon my accent, but 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 in Tagalog obviously means entrepreneurship and hard work. And that's why we've branded this platform like that. Now you can actually go to 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 as an SME, and we have a completely open and online marketplace where I think to date we have 10 lenders offering an array of products through that marketplace. And it's a digital end-to-end experience. The application, the processing, the approval is all done online, and we approve credit within the day through the marketplace. But the real magic here, or the real secret sauce, is that the platform behind the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 marketplace is embeddable into the platforms of others. So for example, 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 is embedded into the merchant experience of Lazada. So if you're a merchant on Lazada, you can, in the Lazada environment, apply for credit through 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀. So you authenticate as a Lazada merchant, you authorize the sharing of things like sales history on the Lazada platform. And that allows the lenders on 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 to instantaneously approve you for credit. And now you've got access to working capital that will allow you to continue selling and serving the Philippine economy through platforms like Lazada. We do the same thing with the distributors of fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG distributors. If you are a small grocery store or a sari-sari store, the distributors that work with us have embedded 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 into their ordering platform. By sharing your order history on the spot, we will approve you for credit to buy FMCG goods for your store. So that's an example of how we play in the platform economy. Of course, what we're doing also allows us to drive financial inclusion. And in fact, our tagline at UBX is include everyone. Everything that we do has a positive and material impact on truly inclusive prosperity. And I can't think of an example better than our 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 platform. A lot of the financial institutions and service providers in the Philippines are not large commercial or universal banks. There are over 400 rural banks, thousands of co-ops, and many more thousands of non-banking financial institutions who are effectively providing financial services to the citizens of the Philippines. These players, they want to digitally transform as well, but they are constrained. They're constrained by access to digital networks, payment networks in particular, but they're also restricted by having access to the capabilities to join these networks and to digitally transform themselves. And so we've created the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 platform, which allows all of these institutions and the agents that work for them to be digitally transformed. Behind the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 network is a blockchain-based distributed payments network, effectively a real-time automated clearinghouse. And what this allows these small financial service providers to do is it allows them to digitally and in real time send funds and payments between each other. But we also connect them through our gateway to the national retail payments system of the country. So for example, you can be in the most remote part of Mindanao and in real time, you can deposit money into someone's BDO bank account in Manila. And on this network, we now layer on additional value-added services like the ability to pay bills, services like agency banking, so that, for example, these institutions can digitally originate loans and fulfill loans from mobile devices in the countryside. And of course, we leverage our 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 platform to make that possible. And I guess before I finish, Richard, just a nod to the future. We see a post-platform future of decentralized and disintermediated finance. I think our 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 platform is a great example of that. By using and leveraging blockchain technology, we have a distributed, real-time, automated clearinghouse and payments network upon which to build further digital transformation. And we think that's the way of the future. You know, if you take all of the participants in the 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 platform, it's effectively the largest branch network of any bank across the country, just because we bring them all together. And we're experimenting, and we're even taking this to market in other areas. I've put some up here on this visual, but I'll just highlight one that we're particularly proud of, and that's bonds.ph. Bonds.ph is a great example of leveraging blockchain technology to bring access to sovereign bonds. So these are bonds of the Republic of the Philippines, but to bring them directly through a mobile app to the citizens of the Philippines. And so for a very small ticket size, anyone in the Philippines can invest in government treasury bonds, can invest in the Republic. And that's made possible through blockchain. It's made possible through the Philippine Digital Asset Exchange, which is one of the companies that we've invested in through our venture capital fund. And in this case, it's also made possible by Union Bank, who has acted as the issuer behind this platform for its rollout. So that's to us, that's the future. And so we're investing in today. We are bringing platforms to market that leverage on what's required today, but we're also looking into the future. And we will continue to do that. We will bring more ventures to market, and we will continue to invest in cutting edge technology, not just through our venture studio, but through our venture capital fund.
Okay, now the most engaging part of the event is the question and answer session. So get ready. We have just a wonderful host, Mitzi Borromeo former CNN Philippines news anchor and just a fantastic person to do this. So please welcome Mitzi Borromeo for the Q&A session. Welcome, Mitzi.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Mitzi Borromeo, and it's wonderful being here with all of you today at the Ultimate FinTech Forum 2021. I'm really eager to learn from all of you, and I already have listening to your presentations. This is such a fascinating topic. I'm learning so much. And we're really seeing the industry boom even amidst the COVID-19 crisis. So we know that the Philippines' fintech ecosystem is really brimming with so much innovation, as we see with our panel here, with this vibrant mix of entrepreneurs like all of you. So the pandemic has been a catalyst for fintech innovation. Under quarantine and lockdowns, the restriction of movement really catalyzed the usage of digital services. So we've seen your companies really boom, but it's really spurred the industry. But I can imagine it's also raised a lot of anxiety, and it must have been really daunting. So I'd like to ask each of you first, at the outset when the pandemic hit, even though you saw a lot of opportunity, what were your biggest fears? What were your biggest anxieties at the outset? So let me just call on you based on who I see on my screen. Let's start with Paolo.
Well, I mean, there's two sets of risks that we saw, or two sets of anxieties that we saw, to use your word. The first one was related to how do we run this company? The second one was how will this country deal with the situation that we're in? Now, when it comes from a company perspective, all of our employees were sitting in an office in Manila on March 13th. And of course, on March 16th, we had to change everyone to work from home. And that's something that for us is quite an easy muscle compared to other companies that are a bit more traditional, because we are a little more digital than the average company, but it's still quite complicated to achieve. You have to make sure, of course, that everybody has a laptop, that everybody has internet connection across Metro Manila and sometimes outside of Metro Manila. And there are several other parts of our business that do require being in the office. For example, shipping terminals to merchants. Which we've been doing quite a lot of over the last few years. So it was an extremely challenging time from March 13th to March 16th. The reality is that it went much smoother than even I would have thought in my wildest dreams. The second big change, of course, was an industry change and a country change. And that's something that is external to our company, and I think is more relatable by everyone on this panel. And for us, really, the objective was, how can we make sure that that there is a silver lining out of this pandemic? How can we make sure that if we are all going to suffer this much and change our lives this much, that at least we make a difference for everyone in the Philippines? And that's how I think consumers and businesses alike in the Philippines really took advantage of the situation by adopting digital technologies more, in making their lives easier, and even catalyze changes that have been in the making for several years.
Yeah, so important to have that positive outlook and people willing to make this transformation. PJ, what about you guys?
Well, yeah, I think being the relatively newest player, one of the newer players in the industries, I think one of our biggest anxieties was, aside from, of course, the coordination, is like, will our system work? What was once theoretical before we launched, and we launched this before the pandemic. Like, will people adopt to our systems, and how do we actually coordinate with the merchant onboarding with the team in terms of how do we process payments? Everything came very fast for us. Of course, there were a lot of hurdles to overcome, but so far so good. Our system has adapted to what the needs of our customers. Again, from payments, we also offered new services like online menus, in-store menus, and delivery as well. So we had to do all that within the span of a couple of months, but I'm very fortunate we have a good team behind us, and everything's good so far.
Well, so you're the reason why a lot of people gained weight during the pandemic. You made it easier for people to order food with all the access. So thanks for making it easier for everyone. Casey, can I ask you, what about you?
So we're in the business of facilitating financing, right? So in Indonesia, when the COVID first hit, we were worried, are we going to get paid back? Well, investors get paid back. So we've made certain adjustments to our loans criteria. So there were certain industries, for example, like F&B, they were pretty badly hit. So we stayed clear from those. There were those like healthcare that benefited relatively more from the pandemic, and those we increased our exposure, right? We also made the choice to insure all the loans that we originated in Indonesia. So those are some of the challenges that I think we've come up pretty well. In fact, last year, our volumes actually grew by 30%. Revenues were up 50%. despite the pandemic. And that was keeping in line with very low NPL numbers in the Indonesia. Now, in the Philippines, the challenge that we faced was trying to grow a team from a very small team to a relatively larger one, despite not being in the country. It's still a learning journey, but I think we've weathered it pretty well thus far.
Yeah, looking good. John, how about you?
Yeah, I think our observation, or what we were worried about, is similar to Casey. We have a lending platform and we service small and medium-sized enterprises. And in fact, Paulo and PJ as well, same thing. And the digital platforms that we're all providing are all part of the solution. But what we're worried about is, okay, that's great. We can enable the SMEs. But what we saw in the lending community was that the lenders, in response to the pandemic and what people were projecting, were tightening up their credit policies. So that's what we were worried about at the onset. But what we discovered was, yes, that was true. There was tightening of credit policies. But at the same time, not just the borrowers or the SMEs that we were enabling, but the lenders themselves, the financial institutions, they also needed to go digital very quickly. They were equally looking for digital platforms for distribution within the parameters that they were willing to lend on. So that was the concern, but I think it played out in a way that ended up benefiting all of us here, on the call.
Yeah, and it's great to see how all of you really responded to financial inclusion. We'll talk more about how you've addressed that. Billy, you've built and advised companies for about 30 years now as an investor, advisor, leader, working in the ASEAN region, Japan, Silicon Valley. What have you been seeing? What do you think the biggest anxieties and fears have been for this region?
Thank you, Mitzi. Good to see you. It's been a while. As a fund manager, immediately you need to take a hard look at the businesses and kind of create your buckets in terms of the ones that are have sufficient cash, have good positive cash flow as well. And you kind of create your stars, the ones that maybe need some attention, the ones that may not work out. As you allocate resources in that respect, then you take a look at what the major pivots need to be done. For example, one of the companies that work closely with made a major pivot in their data analytics and AI towards institutional banking in terms of the volume. They expected a large volume of data to be processed, from retail transactions to institutional movement of funds. So they shifted their fundamental software over towards institutional banking. This is in the US. And this, I guess the ability to be nimble and respond quickly is very important. And of course, watching the cash flow and conserving cash, because no one really knew how long this would last, and we still don't know how long it's going to last.
Exactly. And there are many challenges. So I want to ask about, apart from just challenges brought about this pandemic, in general for startups, and for those of you who may even have come in from abroad, like Casey, for example, Investry was founded in Indonesia in 2015, and you've moved to the Philippines. Can you tell me a little bit about the biggest challenges you've been encountering in the past few months, or the past year?
Well, like John Paulo mentioned earlier, we're in the business of financing SMEs or arranging financing for those guys. The immediate issue that we faced was, how do we get our potential users to trust us in a relatively new type of platform, a crowdfunding platform. We were quite lucky to partner with a relatively well-known conglomerate in 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓿𝓮𝓻. So that helped create a fair bit of credibility with us in our platform. So I believe the regulators recognized that somewhat, and we were amongst the first to get the crowdfunding license here in the Philippines. So for that, we're very grateful. So those have been some of the challenges we faced.
Right, I'm sure it's similar for everyone. I want to ask John now. At UBX, you mentioned this in your presentation. You talked about eye2eye, and this is very fascinating. It's a multi-awarded platform, right? In fact, it's one of the reasons I read about this, why UBX was named fastest growing fintech company in Southeast Asia 2020 by UK-based Global Brands magazine. And this platform has gotten many awards because you've opened up financial services to the wider public, especially for the rural, the unserved countryside. Can you talk about the challenges that you faced? I mean, now it's so successful, but it must have been very difficult at the outset?
Yeah, I mean, I think what could have been a challenge with in a regulatory context, it was actually ended up being the opposite. We socialized that program with the central bank early on. We operated in their FinTech sandbox for quite some time. So that was one of the could have been challenges that we were able to get ahead of. I think the other part of it is just the sheer expanse of the underbanked or unbanked market, including the financial institutions. I alluded to this in my presentation. There are hundreds of regulated financial institutions that are community-based, on their own, very small, collectively, very large. On top of that, tens of thousands of non-banking financial service providers. And so how do you do that? We decided that we would start with the regulated financial institutions because we just thought that that's the toughest nut to crack. So let's face the risk head on and get past that. And at this point, we, on the thrift bank, rural bank financial co-op, we probably have about, of course, it depends on how you measure it. They're not all the same size, but if you use branch reach as a proxy, which ironically these days is maybe less and less relevant as we go digital. But if you use that, we've probably got about half that collective network penetrated. And now we're very well suited. Now we're actively moving into the non-banking financial service providers and we're extending eye to eye to what will inevitably, in our opinion, be a network of independent agencies. Agency banking will now go to independent versus captive agents. That's our view. And of course, the law has literally been designed to make this happen. The Bangko sa Barangay Act is now law, and we are, we're well positioned to take advantage of that. I will, just to tie this back to the pandemic, one thing that we were able to leverage the eye-to-eye platform for was to work with the DSWD and their social amelioration program. And the government was able to tap the eye-to-eye network to get those much needed funds, the ayuda, out to the countryside and out to the people that truly needed it. And so it was great to enable these communities. It was humbling to participate and make a dent when it really mattered for the country.
Excellent. It's really lovely to see, technology helping the community, uplifting the country. I want to ask Paolo now. In May, I think that's around May last year, 2020, your user registrations doubled during the pandemic. Is that right? So more people turned to online transactions. Can you talk to us a little bit about dealing with the clients, customer satisfaction, possibly the challenges faced in that category?
Yeah, I think customer satisfaction for us has never been an issue. I think we're one of the highest rated apps in Google Play Store and iOS Store. And even for people who don't have access to apps, unconnected users. So that hasn't really been much of a challenge for us. Where the challenges have really laid is really in the education on financial services, really teaching someone how to safeguard their password, for example. And the more authentication methods you put, it doesn't actually secure it more after the every marginal authentication method can be given out by the user as much as the first one. So that has been a challenge, not just for us, but I think in general out in the financial community. I think my biggest challenge over the last few years has actually nothing to do with the pandemic. The pandemic, if anything, I think has been, as I've mentioned, a catalyst for a lot of digital products like ourselves. I think the biggest talent for us is to retain talent against many other well-funded players who are looking at the Philippines with increasing interest. The more Amazons, the more AWS, the more UBXs, the more everybody else on this call are growing, right? The more they need to hire talent. And Paymaya tends to be the poaching ground of a lot of people on this call. So I'm very glad that we nurture and invest in our people. And it means, of course, that some of them leave us for bigger paychecks elsewhere.
Right. I mean, that happens here too. People are trained so well that, they're poached and go abroad. So sometimes we come to this brain drain. But with companies like you now here in the Philippines. I think it's really promising for the youth who are looking for jobs now. Let's step away from the challenges now and look at opportunities. There were some recent laws and legislation that came into play that are kind of helping make it easier. I guess that some laws are seen as supportive for new businesses. So government plays a big role, right? Can some of you talk about how government needs to step up or how they've helped? Perhaps Billy, whether it's in the Philippines or abroad. For example, there was the Innovative Startup Act that was signed in 2019. What can you say about government law and policy and the support needed for fintech?
In general, in the Philippine context, the Bangko Sentral and the Securities and Exchange Commission are actually trying to be very progressive. They know technology is moving, and everyone that has a mobile device is fintech enabled and can open a bank account, can borrow, can transact, even though the local branch may be quite distance away. What the regulators are trying to do, and I think is the right approach, is also looking at ways to protect data privacy, digital theft, and fraud, because there are those risks out there, and there are unscrupulous people. So I think the regulators are taking their time and putting the right safeguards to make sure that capital and individual users are protected.
Yes, well, Paolo mentioned that earlier, that people can be careless with their passwords, and also, especially the older generation, I think they're a bit tech averse. So I think they're scared to sign up for some of these platforms or apps. I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the people watching would love to hear what you're doing to take steps to address cybersecurity issues. You know, people are scared to share their data, their bank accounts or credit cards online. PJ, can you talk about what initiatives you're taking to make sure that their data, the customer's data, is secure?
Well, yeah, so when we started this business, the reason why we created our system as such is that instead of giving my bank account details, I just have to give you my URL, which is just pay to PJ Castro, and you can make that payment. So in that respect, we try to avoid the sharing of phone numbers or bank accounts and basically limit it to our URL, which customers can share. In terms of the security, yeah, we're PCI DSS certified. We pass all the certain standards to get our certificates. As also the new player in the industry, the biggest challenge for us is to get credibility for our users. So what we did is we actually partnered with the banks for merchant onboarding. And we also partnered with the likes of UBX as well. So in that respect, that was the biggest hurdle actually, is to get acceptance, because, you know, given being a new player in such a sensitive industry, there were some things that we needed to establish first, which is first credibility and security, which hopefully through our partnership with the banks and the industry players, you know, we were able to get past that hurdle.
Okay, thanks. Well, there's really a lot of opportunity now. I mean, so many needs. I think it's only really because of the pandemic that Filipinos are really jumping into a lot of this technology. Just listening to your presentations, wow, I'm blown away by what's available. It's so easy to start a business now, to get capital. And as I researched to learn more about fintech, I found out that Manila was recognized in 2019 as one of the top cities for fintechs. This was listed in Startup Genome's Global Startup Ecosystem Report. So Manila apparently is ranked among the top 5 locations in the activation phase, or those which are developing. And this is along with cities like Taipei, Busan in South Korea, Calgary in Canada, and Frankfurt in Germany. So Manila is considered one of the best cities in the world for fintech startups. So I want to ask you, why do you think the Philippines is a natural fit for the growth of fintech? Casey?
It's quite simple in my view. You have a very young and digitally savvy population, and this population is always craving for new ways to access different goods and services, including fintech, right? And you've been blessed with a population that is well versed in English, as evidenced by the huge BPO industry. So it's naturally conducive for startups to try to hire people that are naturally like English speakers, right? So, and there's a very big and strong engineering background in some of the top universities in the Philippines. So the congruence of these factors will allow Philippines to be a naturally attractive place for startups to congregate.
Interesting. That's it. And also, of course, the Filipinos are always online. I think in the world, Filipinos are known to spend 10 hours a day on any gadget online. Paolo, you worked in London and New York, so you've seen the environment there. Here, how would you compare? What makes the Philippines different? What makes it better in a sense?
Well, I think when it comes to capital and funding, it's very difficult to compete with London or New York. And even when it comes to sheer talent in a place like London, New York is unparalleled worldwide. But if you look at other demographics, if you look at other data points, the Philippines is a much better place to start a company. You have a population that is 23 years old on average. You have a population that is increasingly smartphone penetrated, with I think we're nearing 70%. While 5 years ago it was very difficult to make a video call anywhere around Metro Manila, today, even across the country, it's much easier to find a decent data connection. Generally speaking, talent tends to be a lot cheaper than it is, of course, in London or New York, and therefore building a company also comes with building talent, and cheap talent is something that is maybe no longer available in the Philippines, but definitely is cheaper than in London and New York. I do think the other big thing for me is while London and New York are English-speaking populations, the Philippines has the rarity of being an English-speaking population, a fully English-speaking population in a country that was pre-pandemic growing close to 7% GDP growth per year. So all of this together, I think, coupled with the fact that financial services in the Philippines up to just a few years ago were very unavailable, and that is being changed by a lot of the people on this panel, means that the opportunity is absolutely massive for us to be able to make the lives of people and businesses much easier in this country.
Yes. John, would you like to add that you're from Canada and you moved here from, in fact, that was Manulife, and now here you are in the banking sector. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Paulo and KC. I think what is enticing about the Philippines is the sheer size of the opportunity. You know, the size of the market, the growth of the market, and of course the historically underpenetrated aspects of the market from a financial services perspective. So definitely the size of the opportunity. Manila for many years has had a very healthy kind of underground, startup FinTech ecosystem. And I think now it's coming into its own. I agree with what I think KC was alluding to. So there's the opportunity, but there's also a dichotomy. There's the opportunity, but the Philippines has historically been disproportionately underfunded from a venture capital perspective. I think, though, that two promising trends are going to change that, and probably what's leading to stories that you're referencing on Manila being an up and coming hotspot. I think one of them is that across VC and FinTech investment overall, it's only gone up with the pandemic across the board, across the globe. So the level of investment, period, has increased. The pandemic has also caused a lot of things that were barriers to leveraging that opportunity to start either, they've either come to fruition, things like connectivity and whatnot that Paulo alluded to, or they're coming to fruition. The national ID, you talked about regulators earlier. The national ID is now going concern. We don't have it yet, but it's full throttle ahead with things like that. So you've got a lot more money, and now you've got a place where some of the barriers are now going away. And then you put into that mix the sheer size of the opportunity. And I think ultimately that's what's driving things.
Yes, we are a growing population, growing opportunities there. We have David Almiral here from Multisys. I wanted to talk about another, being that we're attracting more investors. So I want to ask, what exactly are investors looking at? What should Philippine startups or people who are thinking about startups in the Philippines be thinking of if they're going to launch something?
I think specifically in the FinTech space, if we just look at the type of deal flow that has evolved, let's say over the last 10, 15 years, first we have this confluence of events which John, KC, and Paulo discussed, which is absolutely right in terms of timing-wise, because we were a bit of a latecomer to the FinTech game. But in terms of the business models that I believe have a higher likelihood of success nowadays are those that are collaborative in nature. And we've talked about this ecosystem where they work with different banks, they work with different payment gateways, they work with different exchanges. So the ability to get that sort of scale faster is more attractive to the investors.
Right. Let me go back to David now. David Almiral, CEO and founder of Multisys. Thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts on basically how you work with so many different clients, partners, sort of individuals and businesses? How you should be thinking about whether it's forming partnerships and just bringing your company forward, growing it in this, especially amidst crisis.
Hi, Mitzi. Yes, I think I agree with Billy. I think it's more on like the ready technology that you have now. It's more on like how integrated are your platforms. Normally nowadays you cannot wait, right? If you would like to fly something, you make sure that you have something to easily scale and easily, to integrate or use immediately. That's why, like in Multisys and several IT companies in the Philippines, they're being used now because they have a ready platform that's linking to a lot of integrations. A good example is we cannot just promote one entity, but if you have a system that's linking to multiple entities, they will use you immediately. It's a shortcut to them. And I think also ready platforms that you're able to fly. So like us, if you have a ready e-learning, they will use you immediately because it's a necessity nowadays. If you have your e-commerce platform where people can do business immediately, they will use you again because they need to do business at the end of the day. They cannot wait and sit down and lose money. They need to do business. So those are the things that we're able to to focus on so that partnership will fly. And of course, we should not be wasting time. That's why partnership is very, very vital nowadays.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, definitely. Working together always boosts, any initiative. I want to talk also about the culture. Culture and mindset. There, I've read some debates or hypotheses here and there that one of the challenges for FinTech startups to thrive in the Philippines is the culture, the mindset. So, Filipinos tend to be very shy. They don't like to toot their own horn. And in startups, you kind of have to really, talk about make a lot of noise, basically. So, and also Filipinos don't like to talk about failure. And I think when it comes to FinTechs, usually 90% of startups fail. And that's part of the learning process. Let's talk a little about this. What do you think about this culture and also the importance of failure, especially in a startup? John?
Yeah, I think you're right. You need to cater the startup and the experience to the local context. So for example, just to make it very, very specific, in the Philippines, 99.9, we've seen 99.5, I think. We've these statistics are very small, small, medium-sized enterprises. We actually, and officially there's 1 million of them. Our research suggests that there is a shadow economy of an additional 2 million, up to 2 million, maybe even more. Super small businesses, casual sellers, people with side hustles. So if you want to actually hit the larger opportunities, you have to cater to the local context. So for example, David mentioned e-commerce. So your e-commerce solutions, yes, for sure, you want to sign up the big enterprises, the mid-tier companies. But if you want to scale, you also need to hit that million population of SMEs and that larger shadow market of casual sellers and side hustlers that I talked about. So yes, you do have to pay attention to the local context, but I think it speaks to opportunity, actually, more than anything else. Actually, if there's one thing, and maybe this is for others to comment on and validate my hypothesis here. I think sometimes the hardest thing is for the investors from outside the Philippines to potentially get their head around that there is this huge opportunity. You might just have to do things slightly differently. But if you do it, that opportunity that superficially looks awesome on paper, it is there, but you will need to kind of cater to the local context. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Thank you. I'm curious, does anyone else want to chime in? Anybody else?
Yes, Mitzi, I actually have a strong opinion on this. I think, and I agree with a lot of what John's saying, but on a slightly different note, I think too much is made of the cultural differences of the Philippines compared to other places and the cultural hindrances of the Philippines. Why is it that Philippine startups didn't work properly? Is it because of cultural differences? Is it because we don't apologize? Or we're as you said, people are a bit remiss to failing? I don't think any of that is true. You'll find people who are the same in Italy or the United States or Colombia. It's just a question of what mindset do we want to put into it. And I think a lot of the people on this panel have demonstrated that in the Philippines, you can build successful businesses. People are extremely hardworking, extremely well educated, and the opportunity here is as good in terms of talent as it is anywhere else in the world.
Yes, I like that. Definitely. Filipinos are the best. And I'm biased. Thank you for saying that, Paolo. And I think that's why we're seeing this interest also of more investors coming in. Billy, you're smiling over there. What have you seen? I mean, you know, you've been in this industry for quite a long time. What are your thoughts on that? But also, I'm curious to know more about your thoughts on unicorns. Looking at Indonesia, for example, Indonesia and the Philippines are so similar, but I think there's only one unicorn. So that's a company with at least $1 billion, worth at least $1 billion. But there are more in Indonesia. So why are we not sparking that here in the Philippines? What will it take to bring in these bigger and bolder companies, Billy?
Actually, if you may, I'll defer the Indonesian question to KC.
Okay.
He's there.
Right. So Indonesia, yes. But do you want to comment also about the culture thing, Billy?
No, I agree with Paulo. The attributes of success are the same globally.
Yeah.
The reasons for failure are also generally the same for businesses. Whether at a certain point you stop innovating, you're less competitive, maybe management issues, maybe capital issues. Like the pandemic globally, the businesses that are thriving, surviving are those that have been nimble and can pivot quickly and muster the appropriate cash resources and take advantage of market opportunities. I think that's the same in every market.
Thank you, Billy. So KC, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on that? Indonesia, share a little bit of the experience. Maybe you can help us understand. What is it, maybe what drives things in Indonesia as opposed to the Philippines?
Well, Indonesia has a slightly larger domestic market. It's got a 260 million population versus about 100 million in Philippines. So with a larger backyard, chances are the startups operating there has a bigger market to scale. But doesn't mean that you have a large population, you have plenty of unicorns, right? Where if you look at the US, which is slightly more, north of 300 million people, it's got far more unicorns than any of the Asian countries combined. And you look at a tiny country where I stay in Singapore, we have quite a number of unicorns as well. Well, I think the difference is the ability to leverage off ecosystems. I think if there were to be more startups that will reach a unicorn status, if that is the goal, there needs to be more collaboration between various ecosystems. This is something that John alluded to earlier, right? If there's more cooperation, there's more opportunities to use and leverage each other's strengths, then the acquisition of new clients will be much smoother and faster without having to go through this painful, slow growth process. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well said. I think that's also, PJ, in your presentation, you also talked about how you don't want to be seen as competition. You're working with other platforms like PayMaya. Would you like to comment on that? The importance of collaboration and in partnerships. And what you're doing.
Correct. So in our companies, it's approved that startups can thrive in the Philippines as long as you have the right partnerships. In our case, being a startup, we had limited resources. So our strategy was not to compete, but to partner with all the players in the industry. So our system accepts PayMaya payments. We're also working with UBX, and I think we're also talking to Multisys, David, for certain partnerships. So it is proof that startups like us can hopefully thrive. Again, the fear is that 9 out of 10 startups fail because lack of market adoption or lack of funding, but it's just proof if you get the right partnerships in place, if you get the right talent, which the Philippines has a lot of, then there's opportunity to actually grow startups in the Philippines.
Yes. David, when you founded Multisys, it was a very different time then. What can you say about how things are today as opposed to before and the opportunities we have today and what you're looking forward to?
Yes, Mitzi, as mentioned by PJ, finding the right partnership is the key. But until now, I still consider Multisys as a startup. And the one thing that I learned as a startup is all about empowering, lending your strength to others and allow others to lend their strength to you. So it's basically merging the strength together. And I think I also agree with we talked a while ago about, even we have a lot of nimble startups in the Philippines, but the problem is they're focusing more on financial. But technically, even they have a very good idea and they have a nice creative idea to build. And if once they have a frail system also to fly, they will fail in the end. That's why part of my experience as a startup, instead of you focusing on financing the startup, you can also help them technically. So both financial and technical support is very vital, especially in the Philippines. Because I've met a lot of good startups in the Philippines and they're amazing. We have a lot of good programmers, good startups, but the moment that they fly the product, it will fail because the technology foundation is frail. That's why every time I meet a startup, I always look at the model like, hey, how's the foundation? We always go back to the foundation. And then there you go. And then we contribute to them our experiences. So I think that's the key.
Well said. It's not just about the money. That's also why mentorship is so important. So it's also passing it on. So I'm sure many people are listening out there. They may be mulling their own, ideas for a startup. What would be your bit of advice for those who are either just starting out or thinking of starting? John, let's start with you. One bit of advice.
I'm going to repeat what both PJ and David said. Partnership is key. And by the way, it goes both ways. A few years ago, all the banks and UBX was spun out of a bank. All the banks were getting nervous, But the reality is that the banks can still likely acquire innovation faster than the fintechs can acquire customers. And so there is a very synergistic relationship and opportunity there, like what David was saying and PJ was alluding to. Leveraging partnerships, that I think is very, very good advice. And certainly for us, we live by that. I can't count the number of partners that we have, including most of the people here on the panel. We partner very, very aggressively.
Wonderful. That's the way, as they always say in Asia CEO Forum, it's a way to reignite this year, right, and the future. Paolo?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's about on the hiring side. What I've seen is that there are some startups who, in the interest of getting things going, will cut corners on the type of people they hire. And that's a spiral to failure. And the moment you start hiring people who bring down the average level of everybody else, that's when you start having a lot of problems. So that's what we've seen at 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 is we rather not have someone than to have to compromise on the level of that person.
Right. And also taking care of your people. Very important how you take care of them, right? Billy, your advice.
No, actually, Mitzi, on your point, I was going to mention that this financial crisis, global crisis, is unlike anything we've seen in 100 years. And I think that the HR element, the talent part, when leadership, shareholders, management demonstrates the care for community, everybody's stepping up. I know all the companies on the panel have done great things for their employees. When you have the heart of the employee, no matter how bad things get, if the employees feel that they're aligned emotionally with the company and the leadership in times of crisis, they will be with you for a very long time.
Exactly, this compassion, that definitely you really feel more part of the family. PJ, some advice from you?
Well, yeah, they say that you miss 100% of the chances you don't take. So yeah, it is daunting to get that 9 out of 10 startups don't make it, but again, it's a matter of establishing the right partnerships, leveraging your strengths and augmenting those of your partners. Hopefully, then getting that sweet spot. It just shows that there's opportunity here in the Philippines. We have the talent, the infrastructure. We have the new regulations set in by the government. We have partners who are willing to accommodate new startups, as seen by UBX, Multisys, and 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀. So there is opportunity, and it is daunting, but it has proved that the Philippines is actually a thriving ground for startups.
Good to hear. David, your advice.
I think, we don't expect our stuff to be perfect, but we expect them to learn, right? So that's why, and we have to trust them. And sometimes if you're trying to mold them like you will fail big time. And I think it's better, nowadays you need to have the power of delegation, and making this decentralized management, you can accomplish more than centralizing it in a way that you're doing everything in one spot. So one thing I learned in this pandemic, before we're quite worried when everyone is working from home. 90% of our people are working from home now. But we discovered we are becoming more agile, we're becoming more faster because of this, because we trusted our people. So I think if you are planning to start something, you have to find people that you can trust and find people that you can delegate your task so that you can do more.
Yes, trust is a very important currency. Casey.
The only advice I have for budding entrepreneurs or would-be startup founders would be just one word: grit, right? This is the Angela Duckworth concept. I believe this characteristic is crucial because you will never be able to see what sort of post-pandemic, pre-pandemic sort of difficulties you face, right? But the ability to just put your head down and soldier on regardless of the obstacles, right? I think will be a trait that will bring you a fair amount of success.
Well said. We all have to be, I mean, that's what that's definitely something we all learned in this pandemic. Thank you so much for all your valuable insights. I wish we had more time. This is always the heartbreaking part for me. I know you also all have to get on with your busy schedule. So thank you for sharing such interesting, your journeys and your interesting information. I mean, we know that we can't say for sure what the coming months will bring, but what I know here from hearing from all of you, what is sure is that FinTech will continue to play a big role in helping businesses navigate these uncertain times. And all of you here, your companies will continue to push the envelope in this sector, and you will spur on further growth of FinTech startups in the Philippines. So thanks for all you do and for sharing your valuable insights with us today.
That was absolutely fantastic. We thank 𝐀𝐒𝐈𝐀 Borromeo and everyone for that. Was one of the most engaging Q&A sessions I have ever seen. So there's a big future ahead for financial technology and financial inclusion. So look for it. This is a tipping point, a very interesting time in history. We're all going to see a lot more really big improvements for the economy and for the world. So that was the Ultimate FinTech Forum 2021, and will join us for the next one. Thank you.